Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask that all members have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and insert extraneous material into the record.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Congressional Labor Caucus comes today to oppose the Trump administration's unlawful and unconstitutional attacks on federal workers. Our federal workforce has the experience and the expertise that America needs. We must protect the public, the air that we breathe, the water we drink, the medicine we take, the food that we eat hangs in the balance. This fight is too important. We cannot allow the Trump administration to replace a competitive merit system with a political spoils system. That is why we will keep fighting in Congress and in the courts. I have my colleagues with me today who've come to express their concerns, and I now yield 2 minutes to my friend, Representative Norcross.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, as co-chair of the Labor Caucus, we're here to speak today on something I didn't think we ever had to do. We had to talk about the hard work of our federal workforce, those federal workers who get up every day to go to work, the ones that keep our food safe to eat, the water safe to drink, and the air safe to breathe. Federal workers are nurses, they're doctors, they're in the VA taking care of our vets each and every day. They're civilian DOD workers. That's right, working in the Pentagon and around the world to make sure that our military is ready to go. They're the ones who are processing Social Security checks for our seniors. Yes, the TSA agents every time we go to the airport. And Trump is making it hard, almost impossible for them to do their jobs. He wants them to quit. They dedicated their life for us, the federal workforce. Who are they? They're you and me. They say they have to come back to the office when it's more efficient for a person agreed upon with management to work from an absolute different location. I would suggest, if you really want to know where federal workers are, they should go look at the offices where your member is supposed to be showing up. Tell me how many times they go to the office. But that's what we're dealing with. Trump is revoking their union contracts. The contracts which they negotiated legally and trying to be enforceable. So important. Trump doesn't have the authority to change his agreement, but he's doing it, and it's going to take our courts to turn this around. America's civil service is a merit system. Trump signed another executive order to remove jobs from the nonpartisan civil service. So here we are, folks, back again. Your civil servants who wake up every day to help us. I'm not seeing any of those civil servants fly in their private airplanes like Mr. Musk and Mr. Trump. They're just regular people like you and me trying to get by. And as we have this discussion with all the Labor Caucus, I want to just take a minute to thank Glenn Ivey, who represents so many federal workers back in his district, Stephen Lynch, who's been leading our fight at the Postal Service. But folks, at the end of the day, we have to stick together. Right there, carved into the wood, says union, and that's what we have to do. God bless you, and to every federal worker, thank you for what you do. And I yield back.
Thank you. I now yield 1 minute to Ms. Schakowsky of Illinois.
I want to thank Congressman Ivey for yielding to me. This is so important. And yet, we should be ashamed of the way the Trump administration has been absolutely attacking our federal workers. The people who go to work every single day to do important functions, they don't have any ulterior motive. They are doing things like making sure that our senior citizens get their medications, that we take care of our veterans who need help. These are the kinds of things that they are servants to all of our people. They are doing their best job, and yet they are being criticized. And I think that we want to say a big thank you. And I pledge to all of our federal workers that I will be here to praise you, to protect you, to say that you have not only every right, but every privilege of serving the American people as you have done day in and day out. So I say hooray to the workers who do so much every single day, not asking for any special awards, but do the work that the people of the United States need, and we have to thank them every single day for their work and not denigrate them as the Trump administration has done. With that, I yield.
I thank my colleague and now yield 2 minutes plus to Representative Sanchez.
Thank you. I want to thank Glenn Ivey for his wonderful work. And Mr. Speaker, I rise today in support of our nation's federal workers. As a member of the Labor Caucus, I stand with the essential workers who provide critical services to the American public. Make no mistake, we are seeing a direct attack on our democracy right now. Efforts to shut down federal agencies are designed to erode our nation's foundation. No one, not the president, not an unelected billionaire, has the right to single-handedly dismantle federal agencies created and funded by the Congress. Yet that is exactly what is happening. President Trump has surrendered control over to Elon Musk, allowing him to dismantle our institutions without any oversight. This is a blatant abuse of power, and it's happening on this Congress's watch. They've attacked federal workers, replacing skilled civil servants with political loyalists. They've targeted and smeared public employees who have served this country honorably, many for decades. They're even rejecting union contracts that were lawfully negotiated between the government and workers. This is union busting, plain and simple. As a former union member, I won't stand for that. These contracts are protected by law and cannot be changed on a whim or, more likely, on a tantrum. It gets worse. Elon Musk's Doge has even infiltrated the Treasury Department. He and a bunch of 20-somethings now have access to the federal payment system and the confidential data of almost every American. Why on earth do a bunch of kids who are not even legally old enough to rent a car need access to Americans' personal information and data? Why should they have their hands on your Social Security or Medicare payments, or see whether you or a loved one has a disability, or whether or not you received a tax refund? This isn't just a violation of privacy, it's a breach of the trust of the American people that they put in government. Doge needs to be held accountable for its unlawful actions, and Democrats are and will continue to fight back. We are demanding hearings, investigations, and supporting lawsuits that seek to protect your very personal information. But we need the few Republicans in this body who care about the rule of law to join us in this fight. We need to defend Congress's constitutional authorities, the power of the purse, and oversight of the executive branch. We need Republicans to stand up for all Americans. To all federal workers, please know, you are essential. America values you, we need you, and we have your back. When you're attacked, every American who depends on you is also attacked. I once again thank my colleague, Mr. Glenn Ivey, and I yield back.
Thank you. I now yield 2 minutes to my colleague, Representative Pocan from Wisconsin.
Thank you. I want to thank Mr. Ivey for convening this special order hour and for his hard work on behalf of the federal employees and all workers in his district. As a co-chair of the Congressional Labor Caucus, I'm proud to stand with our essential workers who keep the government running every day. But since day one of this administration, President Trump has relentlessly attacked federal employees as he and Elon Musk seek to eliminate many nonpartisan career public servant jobs across the country. These attacks on federal workers are straight out of the Project 2025 playbook. Unelected billionaire Elon Musk has been bulldozing through the federal workforce, demanding the firing of hundreds of thousands of employees whose only fireable offense is trying to serve the American people. Federal workers are nurses and doctors at veterans hospitals. They process Social Security checks for seniors. They are TSA agents and air traffic controllers who keep us safe when we fly. More than 85% of the federal workforce operates outside of Washington, D.C. In my home state of Wisconsin, there are 18,000 federal civilian employees, including over 5,800 federal workers in my district alone. In the last 2 days, my office has gotten over 1,000 constituent calls with people angry, hurt, and terrified that the services they use every day will vanish along with the workers who make these programs run. An attack on federal workers is an attack on the services that Americans rely on every day. And Elon Musk and Trump will continue to put lives at risk as they seek to cut $4 trillion over the next 10 years to pay for tax cuts for Elon Musk, Donald Trump, and the wealthiest. To all the selfless civil servants, our message is clear. America needs you, and we have your back. We are fighting in Congress to oppose Donald Trump and Elon Musk's baseless attacks on you and your important work, and we urge you to stand strong. I yield back.
I thank my colleague. I now yield 2 minutes to Mr. Menendez of New Jersey.
Thank you, and I want to thank my incredible colleague, Glenn Ivey, for convening us here today and for the opportunity to speak. Mr. Speaker, I rise today in solidarity with our nation's federal workers, including the more than 22,000 who live and work in the great state of New Jersey. Our federal workforce is a vital cornerstone of our work to protect the most vulnerable amongst us, grow our economy, protect our national security, and to keep us safe. In Newark, our air traffic controllers and TSA agents devote their careers to keeping our skies safe and getting us to where we need to go safely. Social Security employees in the Hoboken field office assist our seniors and those with disabilities in receiving the benefits they have earned and depend on. And USCIS officials in Newark assist immigrant families with processing their visas, green cards, and applications for naturalization. Our nation runs because of federal workers, and an attack on them is an attack on the services that Americans rely on every day. Along with my Democratic colleagues, I want to make our message to federal employees clear. We have your back, and we will not back down. We will continue to oppose this administration's baseless and lawless attempts to diminish the important work you do every day. Our civil service is a merit system protected by the right to due process, and attempts to implement Schedule F, union bust, and undermine our collective bargaining process will be met with swift and unyielding resistance from me, the Congressional Labor Caucus, and my colleagues on this side of the aisle. The decision to enter public service is an honorable one, and millions of federal workers and retirees have made that decision deserve our support. Thank you, and I yield back.
I thank the gentleman, and I now yield 2 minutes to Representative McLean Delaney of Maryland.
Mr. Speaker, as a proud member of the Labor Caucus, I rise today to stand up against the administration's actions against our 2.2 million federal workers, including 35,000 of them in the 6th District of Maryland. America's greatest asset is its people, and our dedicated civil servants are no exception. I am so deeply troubled by the administration and Elon Musk's efforts and actions to access every American's data, and to, more importantly, access the U.S. Treasury Department's federal payment system, including U.S. taxpayers' confidential financial information, to slash critical federal programs, and to threaten the termination of thousands of federal workers. I'm even greater alarmed by the Trump administration's flagrant efforts to seek political retribution against federal agents for past investigations, including investigating the violence that occurred on January 6th. Many members feared for their lives that day, and insurrectionists violently assaulted officers tasked with protecting the people here and this building. Now these agents are at risk for losing their livelihoods, for following the law and doing their jobs. All of this follows the Trump administration's OMB directive to illegally freeze congressionally approved federal funding and its letter to more than 2 million federal employees offering a buyout from service. I implore you, do not take that buyout. It is not to be trusted. As the buyout letter says, we are truly at a fork in the road. Do we defend American workers and our institutions, or gut the federal agencies of the knowledge that fuels American innovation and strengthens our national security? These attacks strike at the bedrock of our American values and represent an unprecedented power grab that undermines our democracy's balances and checks. Many of these actions have not been authorized by Congress and rightfully belong under its purview. While I've long believed in seeking common sense, common ground when governing, I must now stand my ground for the 35,000 government employees in my district and countless more across the country, looking now for Congress to take action. Yesterday, I joined a briefing with several colleagues from Virginia, Maryland, and other places, along with members of AFG, AFSCME, Democracy Forward, NTEU, IFPTE, NARF, NFFE, and AFL-CIO, in conjunction to develop an action plan to better defend our workers at USAID, at DOL, at the Department of Education, at NOAA, and so many other agencies under imminent threat of mandated leave, termination, or closure. In closing, from NIST to Fort Detrick to our National Fire Academy in the 6th District, federal workers in Maryland are counting on us, the people in this chamber and in our communities, to stand up and speak up for them. Thank you. I yield back my time.
Thank you. I now yield 2 minutes to Representative McGovern of Massachusetts.
I thank you. I thank my colleague for organizing this special order. Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of our public servants as they face an unprecedented illegal attack by the Trump administration. Our federal employees are part of every single community in America. They keep us safe, they sustain us, and they support us. Now they are under attack. Donald Trump and Elon Musk's attack on the federal workforce is an illegal purge. Don't let anyone call it anything else. This is a purge. It is an unlawful attempt by a reality show wannabe king to install cronies and bootlickers. Our public servants represent the best of us. They are selfless, determined, disciplined, and professional. They are everything that Donald Trump and his MAGA flunkies are not. To our public servants, I will say this: do not be afraid. Do not be intimidated. The law is on your side. We are still with you. A grateful nation is still with you. You have dedicated your lives to the American people. You have made our country strong. Have faith that our country is strong enough to withstand the petty tantrums of a small, self-obsessed man who disgraces the very idea of public service with his every breath. Now is the time for courage. I am grateful for your service. I believe in you, and I yield back.
I thank the gentleman, and now I yield 2 minutes to Representative Landsman of Ohio.
Thank you, and I rise today also to support our federal workers. These are public servants who live and work all over the country. The vast majority of our federal workers do not live in the Washington, D.C. area. It's a big misconception. People think, well, these are federal workers. They're just here in D.C. They're in our districts. Each one of us has probably tens of thousands of federal employees in our congressional districts, meaning that we serve them. And it just so happens they serve us. But Trump and Elon Musk have been setting these fires all over the federal government. They've launched this reckless trade war with China. They tried to stop federal funding from going into our communities. These are our tax dollars. Trump gave an unelected tech billionaire access to our Social Security data, to all of our data, to our federal payment system, and empowered him to purge as many public servants from our federal agencies as he possibly could. One of those public servants is a constituent of mine in Southwest Ohio. She lost her job. For 20 years, she worked at USAID, leading the agency's famine early detection efforts. Her work ensured food reached children, families, and communities in crisis. She saved lives. But it's not just about food. Hunger fuels instability. When people are desperate, terrorism thrives, and when the U.S. pulls back, it creates a vacuum for China to step in. This administration's actions are just cruel, and they're making our country and our world less safe. Why? Are they purging our federal workforce? They've got to find $4 trillion. $4 trillion that won't go to you or me or our communities. They're planning to use these dollars to pay for tax giveaways for the uber wealthy, for the Elon Musks of the world. They're stealing from our workers, our country, and our allies, all so the uber wealthy can get wealthier. It has to be stopped. This Congress can stop it, but the majority has to step up. Thank you, and I yield back.
I thank the gentleman, and I now yield 2 minutes to Representative Caston of Illinois.
Thank you, Congressman Ivey. So last week, I spent an afternoon at the National Air Traffic Control Center in Aurora, Illinois. I'd been invited to discuss some work our office has been doing to make sure that these folks are not penalized for seeking mental health care. None of us could have anticipated that our visit would be after the crash of American Flight 5342 in Washington, but it is safe to say that that office was shook. And then we started talking about mental health. One employee said that their staff still remember the arson attack on this facility back in 2014, and they were nervous that recent budget cuts have limited their ability to maintain security levels at that facility. Another employee asked me, how should they interpret announcements from the Trump White House that federal employees were going to get laid off? Would they have a job? If they got laid off, who was going to do their work? How are they going to continue to support their families? I had a female air traffic controller who asked why Donald Trump immediately blamed the crash on DEI hiring practices. Wasn't lost on any of us that our air traffic controllers, like our society, are not exclusively straight white men, but she was wondering if she was about to get fired solely on account of her gender. Now, let that all sink in. These are hardworking federal employees who have dedicated their lives to keeping our skies safe. They are overworked, they are underpaid, and now they're wondering whether the President of the United States, his Republican enablers, and his IT goons are about to fire them, curtail their pay, blame them for airline tragedies because of the way they look, who they love, how they pray. What possible good comes to the American people by having a bunch of stressed out air traffic controllers? The United States government can't function without these nonpartisan civil servants. Our air traffic controllers, our TSA agents, our VA, our hospital workers, people who make sure your Social Security payments get through. Why would we want to break that? Maybe because you're carrying out Russia's foreign policy. Maybe because you're just a grifter who's figured out that you're going to short the stock market right after you tank it. Maybe you're just a coward. Maybe you're an idiot. Maybe you think it's better to be proximate to power than to stand up for what's right. But whatever it is, it ain't patriotism. And it scares the dickens out of me that standing up for America in 2025 is a partisan endeavor. I yield.
I thank the gentleman, and I now yield 2 minutes to Representative Hoyer of Maryland.
I thank my colleague for taking this special order. I thank my colleague for his service. With full disclosure, my colleague and I probably represent between us about 150,000 federal employees. But I rise not for those federal employees, who I care a lot about, as does Mr. Ivey, but I rise for the federal employees throughout America, but not just for them. I rise because they serve America every day in critical places for veterans, for homeowners, for moms, for dads, for teachers, for doctors, for nurses, all of whom rely on the federal government so that they can give services needed by the American people. Why are we doing this? I just said upstairs that I've been here for 44 years. This is an unprecedented move taken by the Trump administration and the Musk administration in the first 15 days. No thought, no planning, no consultation. It is a blitzkrieg on the American government. Now, let me give you the words of Russell Vought, who's going to be heading up, apparently, the OMB, the Office of Management and Budget. This is what he said not so long ago. We want the bureaucrats to be traumatically affected. When they wake up in the morning, we want them not to want to go to work because they are increasingly viewed as the villains. We want their funding to be shut down. I was referring to EPA, but he's aimed his objective at all of the agencies of government. Mr. Speaker, I rise not only on behalf of federal workers, as I said, who every day perform the services we, the Congress, representing the American people, have asked them to do. They didn't create any of these agencies. We did. They did not give them the objectives. We did. They are performing the services for the American people that the American people need and, yes, want. The initial notice went out to 2 million people, approximately all of the civilian employees of the Federal Service. I want everybody to think for just 1 second, what if all 2 million of Americans, civil servants, said, okay, we're gone, and then promised to be paid for 7 months for doing no work? And the government shut down. Business, commerce, education, health care, public safety would all be shut down. That is not what the American people voted for. Are the people who help feed our seniors, our children, who provide medical care to our veterans, who keep our communities clean and safe, who help Americans recover from disasters, who defend our national security and provide countless other services to American people, villains? Hell no, they are heroes and absolutely essential for America to be great. When you treat federal workers as villains, you turn the American people into victims. That is what this administration is doing. They've offered federal workers a buyout with a deadline, just hours away, without any consultation to determine the adverse or, frankly, positive impact of such an action. That's not what the American people expect us to do. I and the members who speak here, and I hope all the members of this House, will do what the Founding Fathers thought we should do: be an independent branch of government to set policy and not allow the federal workers or the federal government to be run over by somebody who likes firing people. I yield back the balance of my time.
I thank the Congressman. I now yield 2 minutes to Representative Brown of Ohio.
Thank you, Congressman Ivey, for organizing this special order hour. I rise in support of more than 9,000 federal workers in my district and their dedicated colleagues across the country. Make no mistake, President Trump and unelected billionaire Elon Musk are waging an all-out assault on federal workers. In just 2 weeks, they've managed an unlawful union busting, budget freezing, and civil servant layoffs, all designed to intimidate, weaken, and dismantle our federal workforce. This isn't just an attack on federal employees, it's an attack on all of us. In Northeast Ohio, federal workers process Social Security checks for seniors. They are doctors and nurses caring for veterans. They are TSA agents and air traffic controllers who keep us safe when we fly. And they are researchers developing new technologies at NASA Glenn. These are hardworking, honorable public servants who deserve our respect, not threats and not pink slips. Let's be clear. This reckless effort to push federal workers out isn't about right-sizing government, it's about gutting it. It's about dismantling the very services that millions of Americans depend on. This is part of a coordinated effort to erode trust in government because the president and his billionaire buddies want it to fail. They don't want experienced workers loyal to the country. They want political lackeys loyal to only one man. So they push the lie that government is inherently wasteful and that federal employees are part of some so-called deep state. It's nonsense. It's dangerous. And here's why they are really doing it: to strip away labor, consumer, and environmental protections. And most notably, to hand billionaires and their corporations massive tax breaks while sticking it to working Americans. So we have to ask, is this a government of the people, by the people, and for the people? Or is it a government of the billionaires, by the billionaires, and for the billionaires? Federal workers don't serve a president or his billionaire buddies. Let me say that again. Federal workers don't serve a president or his billionaire buddy. They serve the American people, and we stand with them. And with that, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. How much time remains?
The gentleman has 27 minutes remaining.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I now yield 2 minutes to Representative Hoyle of Oregon.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I rise today in support of our nation's federal workers. As a member of the Labor Caucus, I am proud to stand with these public servants who have dedicated their careers to delivering for the American people. This administration has relentlessly attacked these nonpartisan expert workers who make sure our food is safe to eat, our water is safe to drink, and our air is safe to breathe. As a third-generation union member, I am particularly outraged by the obvious intimidation and union-busting tactics that this administration has used on these essential workers. But these actions are not just an attack on federal workers. They are an attack on the services that these hardworking people of my district and this country rely on every day. Let's be clear. Firing federal workers means delays in receiving Social Security checks and fewer law enforcement officers keeping our communities safe. If Department of Labor doesn't have sufficient personnel, it'll be easier for employers to commit wage theft, workplace safety and rights violations. And who does that benefit? Not the American people, not working people. In my district, we know federal workers are not lazy or ineffective. They're our friends, our family, and our neighbors who support us every day. They get up and they go to work for the people of this country and not for a political party. Federal workers, you've had our backs, and I assure you, we have yours. I yield back.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I now yield 2 minutes to Representative Kennedy of New York.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to first thank Congressman Ivey for putting this together here today and for his leadership. I rise today to stand in unwavering solidarity with the hardworking men and women of our federal workforce. As a member of the Labor Caucus, I'm proud to support the public servants who dedicate their lives to keeping our country running, including the 8,500 federal employees who call my district home. These workers are not faceless bureaucrats. They are the backbone of our communities. They are our neighbors. They are our friends. They process veterans' benefits, ensure Social Security checks go out on time, make Medicare payments to our seniors' physicians, ensure our air and water is clean, and keep our nation safe, and much, much more. And yet, right now, they are under attack from a president who's outsourced his own power to a billionaire hell-bent on dismantling our government to serve his own greed. The administration and so-called Department of Government Efficiency are purging career professionals, politicizing civil service, and handing over even more power to the ultra-wealthy. I've been hearing from constituents all week, and this is not what people in my community and across America want. They do not want an unelected billionaire who, I might add, has made billions off taxpayer-funded contracts to actively weaken our government. They do not want an unelected billionaire to create a system where the rules don't apply to him and democracy takes a back seat to his own profits. And they do not want an unelected billionaire to attack our federal workers whose love for our country keeps our community safe and our society functioning. We will not stand by while they buck the rule of law to dismantle the very institutions that protect hardworking families, seniors, veterans, and our democracy. Make no mistake, this is an attack on federal workers that will allow those at the highest levels of our government and their billionaire buddies to exploit the concerns of our constituents, take power away from the people, and enrich themselves at the expense of hardworking families in America. America's civil service is a pillar of our society, and we will defend it. I say to the federal workforce, thank you for your service. We have your back. We will fight for your jobs, your dignity, and the services that millions of Americans rely on. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I now yield 2 minutes to Representative Ballant of Vermont.
Thank you, Mr. Ivey. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm here today to stand with our federal workers and civil servants and to tell them that we will fight these illegal actions. The Trump administration is treating our federal workforce as if they are the enemy. These are regular Americans who work important jobs all over the country, not just in D.C., but in all of our districts. In fact, 85% of the nonpartisan civil servants are spread around the country. Vermont is home to 8,000 of these federal workers. They're part of the 2 million federal workers that operate our national parks. They're scientists at the FDA. They work at hospitals, at NASA. They protect our national security. In fact, 70% work on behalf of our national security and defense. And I will tell you, Mr. Speaker, I am deeply concerned that the illegal purge of our civil servants at the Department of Justice and at the FBI will lead to another 9/11 terrorist attack. And Americans, I ask you, do we really want to put our nation at risk so that billionaires can get a massive tax cut? Follow the money. That's what this is about. Firing our federal workforce to fund tax cuts for billionaires. Don't be fooled by what's happening here. It is about the money. Follow the money. Our federal workers are civil servants because they're here to serve the people. They are hired on a nonpartisan basis because they keep our country running. They keep us safe. What is happening, is an illegal takeover of our government, by locking them out of their jobs, firing them illegally, and bullying them out of a job. Trump and Musk are trying to create chaos and confusion, and it will harm Americans. Not just the people who are being fired illegally, but it will harm all of those Americans in our districts who seek services from these workers. And none of this is about making our government work better for Americans. It is a well-worn tactic used by authoritarians and dictators like Orban in Hungary and Bolsonaro in Brazil, and they do it to destroy government services so that they create chaos and they create confusion, and then we turn against each other. This administration is using chaos and cruelty to amass power and wealth, but not for us, not for Americans, only for them. I yield back.
Thank you. I now yield 2 minutes to Representative Johnson of Georgia.
I thank the gentleman from Maryland, and I'm here on behalf of the House Labor Caucus, and I thank the gentleman for convening us today. And Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong support of our nation's federal workers who are under a brutal and heartless assault by Elon Musk and his co-president, Donald Trump. A week ago, they sent the now infamous fork in the road email to 2 million federal employees, trying to trick them into a quick decision to retire immediately and receive 8 months of severance pay, which is false, while threatening that if you refuse to retire, your job might be eliminated. My brothers and sisters, don't fall for the okie doke. Don't retire. Stay on the job. You have rights that protect your job. So don't let them intimidate you into retirement. Your country needs you to continue your work. You are a professional and a highly skilled person, and we know you work long hours, often under difficult circumstances, and you do so because you believe in the importance of public service. We will not allow Elon Musk and Donald Trump to replace you with people willing to kiss Trump's ring rather than serving our country. Stay the course, keep your eye on the prize, and House Democrats, we've got your back. And thank you for your service. And with that, I yield back, but not before pointing out that they're doing this with House Republicans and House and Senate Republicans letting it happen. Don't fall for the okie doke. Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you. And I now yield 2 minutes to Representative Takano of California.
Thank you for yielding. The actions coming out of the White House are shocking. They're alarming. They're unconstitutional. We have seen an unelected billionaire attempt to lay off, fire, and purge federal employees from across the executive branch. No agency or department is safe, not even the department taking care of veterans. And as the ranking member of the House Committee on Veterans Affairs, I have been quick to warn employees at the VA not to fall for the recent attempt from Musk to buy out employees. I've warned VA employees and providers. Elon Musk thinks you're stupid and won't see through his deceptive and fraudulent buyout offer. VA employees should ignore his email and send it to the trash bin. And that the Trump administration is playing a dangerous game with your livelihoods and veterans' lives. The Department of Veterans Affairs has a mandate to ensure that veterans with visual, hearing, mobility, and cognitive impairments can still apply and receive care. The Trump administration put an end to that mission to reach out to veterans with visual, hearing, mobility, and cognitive impairments. He put an end to that mission in the fervor to get rid of diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts in federal agencies. Yes, diversity, equity, inclusion includes veterans with visual, hearing, mobility, and cognitive impairments. So far, 60 employees with the mission of reaching out to these very veterans with unique challenges to encourage them to apply for VA have been put on leave. We're talking about veterans with visual, hearing, and mobility and cognitive impairments. The federal hiring freeze the federal hiring freeze initiated on President Trump's first day in office has left approximately 700 open positions that cannot be filled. These are 700 opportunities to increase veterans' access to care that will instead stay unfilled. And what is even more shocking is that my Republican colleagues have stayed silent while veterans' care is being impacted by DOGE. I challenge my Republican colleagues who sit idly by to stand up to the richest man in the world. Stand up to this would-be autocrat. Stand up to this bloodless coup. Stand up for federal workers and your constituents. I yield back.
I thank the gentleman. I now yield 2 minutes to Representative Carter of Louisiana.
Thank you, Mr. Ivey. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise today in strong support of our nation's federal workers. As a proud member of the Labor Caucus, I stand with these professionals who keep our government running. Their work is vital to our health, safety, and security of the American people. Since taking office, President Trump has attacked federal employees, seeking to replace nonpartisan civil servants with unqualified political loyalists. These workers ensure our food is safe, our air and water clean, our veterans are cared for. They process Social Security benefits, safeguard our airports, and protect our communities. More than 85% of federal workers serve outside of the national capital region, meaning these attacks impact every single congressional district in our nation, including mine in New Orleans and the river parishes. Firing federal workers leads to delays in Social Security payments, longer VA wait times, fewer law enforcement officers on the street. We cannot allow reckless policies to dismantle these vital services. Trump's administration recently issued a deferred resignation offer, claiming employees could resign by February 6th and still receive pay benefits until September 30th, 2025. There's no evidence that this is legal or even real. Federal employees who accept this offer may face retaliation, unemployment, and no recourse. This is a calculated effort to weaken agencies and cut services. Simply put, it's a sham. We must also oppose Schedule F, which would strip civil service protections, making employees at will and vulnerable to political purges. Our government should be staffed by professionals based on merit, not political loyalty. The American people deserve a government that works for them, not for some partisan politician. Finally, Trump's union-busting tactics, including rejecting legally bargained contracts, cannot stand. The right to collective bargaining is a fundamental right, and these agreements must be honored. To all federal workers, America needs you. The Labor Caucus has your back, and we will fight for your rights, your jobs, your dignity, and your livelihood. Stand strong. We are with you. Don't fall for the okey doke. And know this, that we stand with you and we've got your back. I yield back.
I thank the gentleman. I now yield 2 minutes to the representative from Maryland, Ms. Elfreth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 44,000 civil servants, hardworking, qualified, passionate public servants call Maryland's 3rd Congressional District home. And in the last week, thousands have reached out to my office, concerned, anxious, and wondering if their government actually values the work they do on behalf of the American people. It's clear that through the fork in the road email that 2.2 million federal employees received, in attempts to expand Schedule F that President Trump and Elon Musk are trying to remove civil servants from the civil service. Instead, they want to fill our federal workforce and put life-saving services for the American people in the hands of unqualified political cronies in a modern-day spoils system. The irony, of course, is that the civil service was created to avoid this situation. The Congress recognized that cronyism and corruption did not serve the American people and did something in 1883 to create a merit-based civil service system. So, Mr. Speaker, on behalf of my constituents, as the proud daughter of 2 civil servants and as a proud member of the Labor Caucus, I stand here appalled by this administration's changing of the rules on these workers. I'd like my district, everyone in my district, and every federal worker in this nation to know that House Democrats have your back. And with that, I yield my time.
Thank you. I now yield 2 minutes to Representative Magaziner of Rhode Island.
Mr. Speaker, I thank my friend Mr. Ivey for yielding, and I rise today as a proud Vice Chair of the Congressional Labor Caucus to stand with the hard-working men and women who keep our government running. Federal workers show up every day to serve their neighbors and our country. These are the workers who make sure Social Security checks go out to your parents and grandparents. These are the men and women who deliver our mail no matter the weather. The doctors and nurses at the VA who provide care to our nation's bravest. And when Donald Trump and Elon Musk attack these public servants, it means fewer law enforcement officers working to keep us safe, slower disaster response for families hit by severe storms, longer wait times for Social Security and Medicare. But attacking these workers is exactly what Donald Trump and his co-president Elon Musk have set out to do. They are attacking air traffic controllers, postal workers, food inspectors, people who keep us safe. And why? To find money to pay for tax cuts for billionaires. That's right. Their goal here is to line the pockets of the wealthy off the back of working people and the services that all Americans rely on. These attacks on federal workers are an attack on all working people across this country. And I want to tell the federal workers in Rhode Island and across the United States that House Democrats stand with you. We see your dedication. We know the positive impact that you deliver every day. And the best resistance is to keep showing up, keep doing what you do best. This country runs because of you. And here in Congress, we are going to fight to oppose Donald Trump and Elon Musk's baseless and cruel attacks against those who have devoted their lives to service. And I yield back to Mr. Ivey.
Thank you. I now yield 2 minutes to Representative Takuda of Hawaii.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in solidarity and with much aloha for our nation's federal workers. As a member of the Labor Caucus, I am proud to stand with these essential employees who keep our government running every single day. Federal workers care for our veterans. They keep us safe when we travel, and they make sure our seniors get the Social Security payments that they need to put food on the table and to survive. Our federal workers were also the ones who were first on the scene when fires ravaged Maui. They saved lives, they provided food and shelter, replaced documents, they gave our people hope. Day in and day out, federal workers are the unseen hands and hearts that guide our nation through complex challenges and maintain the infrastructure and services that underpin daily life. They give our people hope and help. So when we attack federal workers, we not only discredit their work, Mr. Speaker, we cut off the very hands holding us up. Since taking office, President Trump has made it his #1 priority to undermine and dismantle our federal workforce. Over the past 2 weeks, the Trump administration has been bullying federal workers to resign while making a hollow promise of pay and benefits through the end of the year. Now, President Trump is threatening mass layoffs for those who refuse to accept this bogus and deceptive office. We have 43,000 hardworking federal employees in Hawaii. Many of these civil servants have contacted me expressing their anger, frustration, and their fear. One constituent who spent his entire career with the Department of Health and Human Services said he's experienced several presidential transitions, but none as demeaning and demoralizing as this one's. Once committed to a full career in public service, he now wakes up daily, dreading the new abuse and attacks he and his colleagues will face. Let us be clear, federal workers are not the problem. They are part of the solution. They don't make decisions based on political whim. They don't serve a single master and his billionaire friends. They serve the people of this country. The American people deserve a government that works for them, not against them. To all the federal employees in Hawaii and across this country, we see you, we hear you, and we'll fight to protect you. Thank you for your dedication and for your service. You are the quiet force that keeps our nation strong. You've always had our back. Now it's time we have yours. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
Thank you. I now yield 2 minutes to Representative Dexter of Oregon.
Thank you to the Congressman from Maryland for making this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I rise as a proud member of the Congressional Labor Caucus in support of our federal workers today. I introduced new legislation earlier today to protect federal workers who stand up against Elon Musk's grotesque seizure of critical government agencies. My bill, the Stop Musk Act, would prevent retaliation against any federal employee who resists illegal or unconstitutional efforts led by Elon Musk. In the last week alone, Musk has seized control of the U.S. Department of Treasury's payment system, exposing Oregonians' personal financial information, has shuttered the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID, putting the lives of millions of people at risk, and threatened the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, otherwise known as NOAA, undermining our work to combat the climate crisis. And this is just the beginning. Under this legislation, federal employees who resist, circumvent, or prevent Musk's illegal and unconstitutional takeover would be protected against retaliation for their efforts to fight back. The world's richest man should not have the power to unilaterally dismantle the federal government and the critical services it provides Oregonians. Federal employees are at the forefront of fighting Elon Musk's power grab, and we must protect them. All week, I, like all my colleagues, have been hearing from constituents who are demanding action. Let me be clear. We will use every legislative, judicial, and public pressure tactic to stop Musk's takeover and protect our workers. This multi-front battle will be fought in the courts, the halls of Congress, and in the public sphere. We must stay loud, we must stand tight, and we must press on. Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. How much time do I have remaining?
The gentleman has 2.5 minutes remaining.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just would like to say that a few hours ago I stood with members of unions, employees at the Department of Labor, and people walking down the street who saw what we were doing and wanted to join in and support the cause. And as I stood out there and spoke in favor of the efforts that they were making to be heard, to protect their jobs and protect their ability to work for the American people, it reminded me of my father, who had worked in that same building 4 decades ago until he was forced out during the Reagan administration. To my colleagues who were there today, I want to thank them for joining. To the employees who were out there, I want to say this. I lived through what you are going through right now, and I understand, and for that reason I recommit myself to working hard to protect your rights, to make sure that you don't get forced out of government, even though you haven't done anything wrong. You've got the experience and the expertise to do the work that the American people need, and we want to make sure that you have a chance to continue to do that. And I want to thank the Congressional Labor Caucus as well for standing up and making sure that we continue to fight here in Congress to protect their rights. And lastly, I'd like to thank all of those people out there, whether they're union members or attorneys or employees who are fighting every day to get their point across and make sure that we're heard by the Trump administration. Thank you for what you're doing. And I want to urge you to continue to do the work that you're doing because it's making a difference. The Trump administration has made many moves. Many of them have been, in my view, unlawful and unconstitutional. And these, especially the ones that are impacting the employee rights that these government employees have earned over the decades, like my father, who joined the Department of Labor after his service in the Air Force, they deserve to be treated fairly, with respect, and with recognition of the legal rights that they deserve to have. So with that, I want to thank the members of the Congressional Labor Caucus and yield back the balance of my time.
This one. Members are reminded to refrain from engaging in personalities towards the President and to direct their remarks to the Chair. Under the Speaker's